So we'll be seeing in this lecture about multidimensional vulnerability index. So why is this in news? What is this? What is its benefit? And why it has been brought in? All those things we will see. So let's get started. What is the news? The news is basically United Nations General Assembly, which is there, UNGA. It has launched the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index. Now it is on the lines of Multidimensional Poverty Index. It is on similar. In fact, you will find it similar. There might be a couple of changes. For example, bank account is mentioned over here, but it's a similar thing. Okay. So UN General Assembly has launched the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index. What is the reason for this? See, United Nations provide aid, charity for different reasons to different countries. Now they do that. Now they want to do it more efficiently, and this Multidimensional Vulnerability Index is supposed to give them a better understanding of the least developed countries, island countries, so on and so forth. So that is why they have brought it as a new tool. New tool for what? For helping them. Helping them as in basically ultimately the help is going to the small islands, of course, to the small islands, to help the small islands and developing nations to access low interest financing. Now how is this going to help them access low interest financing? Because when as per Multidimensional Vulnerability Index they will be lower on the index, it will be easier for them to take the low interest financing from international organizations, including the United Nations. Now this is voluntary. This is voluntary, but of course United Nations urges and wants the island and the developing nations to use them. Okay, this will become for sort of a criteria or a tool so that they know who is low on MVI and then help them out accordingly. So what is this vulnerability? What is vulnerability? And then what we will see, what is Multidimensional Vulnerability Index. So vulnerability is what? When there is a risk and you do not have the capacity to address the risk, then you are vulnerable. See, there are two things involved here. There is a risk and then there is ability to mitigate the risk. So risk and ability. Let's say I do not have ability, but then I don't have any risk also. So zero ability and zero risk leads to no vulnerability as such. Or I may have the so if I take a talk about, let me just make a sort of a chart over here. If I talk about risk and I talk about ability, let's see, do we have vulnerability or not? Okay. So risk is zero, ability is zero, but the risk is zero, so I am not vulnerable. But this situation will actually not be there. There is risk in anything and everything you do. So this is a hypothetical situation theoretically. If there is no risk, I have ability, of course there is no vulnerability. I have ability, but the risk is not there only. Again, this is a hypothetical situation because in these two situations risk is zero. Now when the risk is there, ability is not there, yes, there is a vulnerability. If risk is there, you have the ability to overcome that, mitigate it completely, then there will be no vulnerability. So what we are interested is this, and generally this is the situation throughout the world. Even if you take the developed country also, still there is a situation. They have homelessness, they have poverty, they have vulnerability, there can be natural disasters, there can be man-made disasters, so on and so forth. So majority of the cases will lie here. Hardly any case will be here. In fact, this can also be considered as hypothetical. You are saying whatever risk there is, we can mitigate 100%. Again a hypothetical situation. Again a hypothetical situation. This is the real situation, and this situation can be further divided into your risk is 1, your ability need not necessarily be 0. You can write it 0 to 1. So your ability would be 0, 0.1, 0.2, so on and so forth. So risk is there. You have different amount of ability to overcome that. That is why you will have different amount of vulnerabilities over here. Okay, so that is the relationship. So what is vulnerability? When you have risk, and you are not able to mitigate it, you are vulnerable. The degree of vulnerability may change. So this is the definition which is mentioned. Vulnerability refers to the susceptibility of individuals or a group, community, section of a society to harm, by which they can be harmed due to various factors. Factors can be social, economic, environmental, health related circumstances. It can be anything. It can be man-made, it can be natural as well. Okay. Now coming on to what is multidimensional vulnerability index. As I said, it's on the same lines as poverty. So earlier poverty was calculated based on just calories, but then came the multidimensional poverty index talking about the standard of living, the schooling, the health. Similar is the case over here. They also talk about education, health and standard of living, right? So, and it is a better indicator than GDP. In GDP the country can grow, of course, but then per capita income can also grow, but the rich may become richer, poor may become poorer. Multidimensional poverty, what it did, it gave a better index. Here also multidimensional vulnerability will give a better index of telling us what is actually happening. So it aims to capture vulnerability and resilience in all developing countries and island countries as well. Initially advocated by island states, right? It has important factors like import dependency, climate risk, social resilience, etc. Now, what is the significance? Of course, the significance is when you calculate your own multidimensional vulnerability index and it comes out to be lower, that can, or when you give the data so that United Nations can calculate your multidimensional vulnerability index and it comes out to be lower, you will get concessional money, finance. So see, the thing is, India also gets cheap finances, cheap loans because India is a developing country. The day India gets the tag of a developed country, a lot of these finances will go away because it will be assumed that we don't need them. So it is not to say we should not develop. Of course, we should get more affluent and develop, but that is the criteria. If you're a developing country, you will get cheap finances. So this is one indicator. If it indicates you are vulnerable, you will get access to concessional financing, improve planning, manage debt, and prepare for climate impacts. So it is a finance plus approach. Finance plus approach. Generally these international organizations, when they give loans, they also keep a check of utilization of those funds, and sometimes training and skill transfer is also there to be able to utilize the fund more efficiently. Now what are the indicators and the weights of multidimensional vulnerability index? As I said, health, education and standard of living is there. Now all these three dimensions have been given the weightage of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Now health has only 3 indicators, right? Nutrition is given 1/6 weightage, higher than the child and adolescent mortality, which is 1/2, and maternal health is also 1/12 and 1/12. Now in education there are just 2 factors, years of schooling and school attendance, both are 1/6. Now when it comes to standard of living, there are I think 7 indicators, and each indicator has similar weightage, that is 1/21 for all. What are these things? Cooking fuel, sanitation, drinking water, housing, electricity and assets. The same thing you would also find in multidimensional poverty index, but there is an additional thing over here, that is the bank account. Okay. Of course, a similar index which I have been talking since the beginning is what? It is your multidimensional poverty index, which is a metric to assess the poverty in a country, which again considers what? It considers your health, education and standard of living, which was represented by 12 indicators. So you can see how similar it is. Health, education and standard of living representing 12 indicators. Here health, education and standard of living. The only difference is the number. Here it is 3 plus 7. This bank account, I think bank account is the one which was not present over there. You can say in the multidimensional poverty index. Rest you will find similar things. Sanitation is there, drinking water, housing. You have years of schooling. There you have years of schooling, yes, and I think school attendance also. So it is on the similar pattern, but it is more refined, it is new, and the weightages, if you can see, the weightages here are different. Since here there are 7 indicators, their standard of living had 6, so each would have been 1 by 18. Here it is 7, so each is 1 by 21. So slight difference, you can read both of them parallelly because the question can be based on the nuances between the two. Okay, but it is on the same lines. Now this multidimensional poverty index which was there, it employs the Foster methodology. So there were two people, Elkayer and Foster. They developed this methodology first to calculate the poverty. Earlier, as I said, calorie was the criteria for poverty. Basically, how much calorie an individual needs and how much money is required to get that calorie every day, that used to become your poverty line. But then that was not enough. Just food is not enough, clothing, shelter, and even that became not enough because there are other things, sanitation, maternal mortality, health, education, so on and so forth. Because if education and all is not there, then you will remain in poverty. So the idea is not just to have hand to mouth, but to eliminate poverty also. So the standards became stringent and more stringent. That itself shows the development that we are making, and that model is known as Elkayer-Foster methodology to calculate the multidimensional poverty index. And on the same line, the multidimensional vulnerability index is also brought in. You should remember what it is, the components, the weightages, as well as who has brought it, the United Nations General Assembly. It is for the small islands as well as developing countries to get access to cheaper finances. Thank you.